Good afternoon to our viewers in Germany and good morning to our viewers in the United States. Hello, I'm Steve Sokol, the president of the American Council on Germany, and I'm very happy to welcome you to today's Kaffeepause, where we regularly check in with a journalist based in Berlin to talk about the news stories behind the headlines. Today, I'm very happy to welcome Sabine Rennefanz. She's an award-winning journalist and author, as well as a columnist for Der Spiegel. Herzlich willkommen.
Hallo, hello, guten Nachmittag, guten Morgen in the USA, good morning to the US, and good afternoon for the Central European listeners. Very
Well,
happy to be here. Thank you, Steve.
Sabina, I'm really happy to have you with us today because as people can see, your bio was just posted in the chat. You have a lot of experience reporting on the former GDR and some of the tensions between Eastern Germany and Western Germany. And of course, this year marks the 35th anniversary of German unification on Friday, October 3rd. That is the formal day of the anniversary. And so I'd like to focus our conversation today about on some of the issues that focus on Ost und West, right? Here we are 35 years after unification. How much of a difference is there between East and West? What are some of the trends? What are some of the challenges that Germany is facing? And I generally like to start the Kaffeepause by asking about the political mood in Berlin, but maybe it makes sense to sort of change the question a little bit today and talk about the political mood in Germany on the occasion of the 35th anniversary of German unification. Please share with us sort of your observations about the Stimmungsbild, the mood at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, Germans are not known for happy-go-lucky, and there's always like everything is very dark, and we like to talk about downfall and everything. But this time, I think there's some real difference. I used to be always around doing lots of interviews, talks, discussions around the date of the 3rd of October. And this year, I would say it's the first time in 10 years where there's hardly anything. I mean, there will be like a central ceremony in Saarbrücken, and Chancellor Merz will be speaking, but there doesn't seem to be much buzz actually. No one seems to be actually wanting to talk about the unification, and it feels like, I mean, the West Germans, to put it a little bit blunt, are not very interested anyway, and they don't want to continue talking always about the problems of the East. And the East Germans have sort of withdrawn and also concentrated on their own history, and there are a lot of exhibitions about East German actors, East German art. So people seem to be like separating, and there was a very good or very interesting survey out today, which I would like to share with you. 61% of Germans, East and West, say they're more divided than ever, than in contrary to growing together. So only a minority thinks they're growing together. And if you only look at East Germans, they even say 75% of East Germans say, yeah, we're more growing apart than together. So, and this has changed since 2019. So it was actually going better. For this institute has been doing the same survey over the years, and it was going like closer until 2019. But since then, it has grown apart, and this year particularly bad alienation, I would say.
So I mean, that's really interesting, right? That in the last 6 years or so, there has been an increasing sort of growing apart or pushing apart. Um, I guess the study that you're quoting was a Forza survey that was just released today, and in case anybody wants to look at it, and it's something that it's a study where I guess 1,000 people were asked, so it's a pretty good survey group. But there's real concern that the two parts of Germany are becoming even more inward focused instead of thinking about sort of a united Germany as well. What do you think contributes to this trend since 2019?
Well, I think we have like an economic development, Germany has been basically not experiencing growth for the last 6 years. So there you have it. And the problems in the economy are always felt much deeper in the East than in the West, because there's much less big economy. No big companies have their headquarters there. The salaries are lower. So and lots of closings down have been happening. And so East Germany is always like feeling the crisis more strongly than the West. So that's one point. And then I think the big thing, and it has been totally underreported in my point of view, the Corona crisis has really been a big separator and felt more. I think people in the East were more disappointed in the handling of the Corona crisis, and people felt very alienated by the sudden turn of the like almost slightly autocratic movement.
Mhm.
There was this discussion if there should be mandatory vaccination, and people have been called bad names by high-ranking politicians if they were skeptical of vaccinations. And this has left a lot of people very disenchanted with I think politics in general, and there have been cleavages. Another big cleavage is, of course, the age situation. Germany has a very low birth rate and the very negative demographics, so to say. It's a very old country, so everything's worse in East Germany, so to say. So you have, for example, the state of Thuringia, the federal state. If it would just be a country, it would be the oldest country in the world with the highest male population. So you have a very difficult electorate, so to say. And then if you look at how the people vote, that of course has been also like, yeah, a big discussion point. And you see,
Mhm.
I think how it's been framed is that there's been like a development, like the East is turning to the AfD, to the far right. I mean, I like to frame it a little bit differently. We can talk about that later, but that also has been contributing to this growing alienation.
So we'll certainly get into some of the politics, and particularly the AfD in just a moment. But before we do that, I mean, one of the interesting takeaways I thought from this study was that when the study was presented in Berlin earlier today, the head of the foundation that had commissioned the study basically said that the sense of unity is fragile,
Mm.
and that's a risk, right, for the country. Can you talk a little bit about this fragility and what it means? Obviously, there are some of these different pressures and trends. You started talking about it a little bit with regard to the situation in Thuringia, and we'll obviously get into it in terms of voting patterns. Um, but can you share with us a little bit what the sort of the sense is in Eastern Germany?
I think a lot of people have been very disappointed with how things were going since 1989 and 1990. The transformation was very, very harsh. The shock therapy was done. A lot of companies were closed, and since then there have been constant shocks to the system. So there was a massive closing of big factories and companies, and then there was always more waves of deindustrializations and lots of hopes as well, which often didn't materialize. So people had to go through a lot of changes, and they worked very hard and tried to get better. But when they see now that the differences they're not going away. When I was young, when I was 15 when the wall came down, people said like, "Ah, yeah, your generation will sort of fulfill the unity and you will not have any problems, but there won't be any differences between East and West. You have the equal chances." And now people see it's not that's not the case. The salaries are still different. As an East German, you can earn for the same job 1,000 euros less for exactly the same job in the same company. The elite representation is not there. East Germans most of the time have bosses who are from the West, also in the East itself. So not even in the East itself, you have like East Germans. So that is a problem, especially in the institutions, when, you know, university or administration, when you have the feeling there's always like someone above you who doesn't know the area, who maybe commutes to Berlin or to Munich, doesn't live there. And the assets are also completely different. You know, we have this, I mean, you have this everywhere in the Western world, this sort of huge inheritances that are coming, and the East, there's no inheritance to speak of, no assets. People couldn't really accumulate anything. They didn't buy houses, and maybe they inherit their little barn from their grandmother, or their house in the countryside. Of course, I'm speaking in general terms. There might be exceptions from that, but the differences between assets is also very huge, and people, especially people who were born after the fall of the wall, who have nothing to do with the GDR, they realize, oh my God, like I can try and work hard, but in the end, yeah, the differences remain, and the promise that is in the basic law and the Grundgesetz of like equal living conditions isn't basically fulfilled, and doesn't seem, and the West often doesn't seem to care. That is another big problem, that there seem to be, yeah, no real interest anymore, because now the West is also feeling the problems very much. And I was really surprised that Merz, the chancellor, he was quite popular in the East a few years ago, but he hasn't done any speech. He hasn't really sort of addressed the problems. I don't even know if he's aware of, he is just busy with foreign politics, with Trump, with Putin, or with the other problems in the West.
I think one of the big questions for Friedrich Merz is how he will end up addressing some of the domestic issues that you've talked about. And these are domestic issues that are, you know, focused on Germany as a whole, but also particular issues related to Eastern Germany. We've all, you know, heard about him as the Außenkanzler, and how well he's done on the world stage, but there's a point right now where there are a lot of domestic challenges that he's going to need to face. And it's interesting to hear you say that up to now, he hasn't really addressed the Eastern Germans specifically. You know, when you were talking just now about some of the challenges after German unification, when the Treuhandanstalt came and privatized, or basically bought up and sold, and closed a lot of businesses and industries in Eastern Germany. At that time, there was also a huge brain drain from the East to the West or elsewhere, as people sought opportunities. And of course, the population of East Germany, of the DDR, was much smaller than the population of West Germany. But are you observing the same kind of brain drain right now, that people who are living in Eastern Germany are leaving because they find better opportunities elsewhere, better pay elsewhere?
I don't have the exact figures to hand, but I think the worst brain drain was until 2017 or so, and they're really quite sort of shocking numbers between 1991 and 2017, like more than 4 million people left. That's almost like a quarter or a fifth of the population. And I
Because
think
the
in the last
population, if I remember correctly, the population in 1989, 1990 was 17 million
17, that's correct. Yeah,
in Eastern,
17.
in the
Yeah,
GDR.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And so to
So,
lose
and
4 million people is significant.
yeah, it's massive. I mean, and they all went to Bavaria or Baden-Württemberg or abroad, in fact. So one must not forget that a lot of East Germans live now there. I think the current figure again is that more East Germans are leaving than moving there. I think universities, I hear that universities have a massive problem to get students from West Germany, and they try to get Chinese students now. That seem to be just to fill the spots. And I mean, demography is a beast, isn't it? I mean, if
Hmm.
there are less people to be there to create new people, then it's like a sort of vicious circle. So there are much less people actually who can leave at all. And
Hmm.
I think if you want to have a career and if you want to earn like proper money, then you have to go to the West. It's just
Hmm.
no beating around the bush. I mean, you can go maybe to Berlin. I don't know if that what that counts. I mean, East West, but you have to leave the rural areas. So and Leipzig and Dresden, I mean, they have a little bit more of economy. Dresden, particularly hoping to yeah with this Taiwanese chip company. But nevertheless, if you, I mean, really, most people have to leave if they want to have like a traditional career.
Since you were talking a little bit earlier about institutions and representation, I have two questions that basically have to do with sort of defense, if you will, which were just submitted. One is somebody's curious to know whether Germans from the eastern states are more or less represented in the Bundeswehr, in the German military.
Should I answer that right now? Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, yeah. Also, there was actually a new survey, the Elite Monitor, last week from the so-called Ostbeauftragte, who's like a sort of mini minister from the East. It's not really a minister, so and she and the interesting thing was that there was no in the higher ranking of the Bundeswehr, there was no single East German, like not in a higher ranking, no East German generals, for example. But I did a survey myself a few years ago because I was curious because a lot of my brother's friends joined up the Bundeswehr and they went to Afghanistan and Kosovo and God knows where, like lots of young boys from rural Brandenburg, where I'm from, and it actually turned out that they're sort of on the basic level, there are more East Germans than West Germans on like sort of basic soldiers. I don't know the name of the rankings, but like the lower ranks
Mhm.
of the Bundeswehr are actually more East Germans. Because especially in the 90s and the 0 years, maybe not so much now, but if you didn't want to go to university and pursue an academic career, but still wanted to have safety and maybe a little bit of adventure, then you joined the Bundeswehr because it was your ticket, like to learn something, to get a steady salary, and also go abroad. So,
Yeah,
and a
I
lot
mean
of,
to develop skills, right?
yeah,
And then also have, as you say, a steady income, and some opportunities that you might not have had if you had stayed at home.
yeah.
The other question that was just submitted has more to do with the German defense industry, and whether it's realistic that this new sort of defense industrial complex can be sort of built in Eastern Germany, which is something that I think Friedrich
Hmm.
Merz had suggested at some point, or whether it's something that will probably go someplace else. I mean, this is all speculation at the moment, right? But it's clear that Germany needs to invest much more in its defense and needs to increase its defense production. The question is sort of where is that going to take place, and are Germany's new lender, new states, a good location for some of that?
Well, the leaders of those countries might think yes. I mean, there was the meeting last week of the Ministerpräsidenten with Friedrich Merz, like the heads of the federal states with the Chancellor. And it was actually the heads of the federal states of Thuringia and Saxony who said we need um, more defense companies in Germany, and we have the facilities, we have the areas, we have this, we we have the workforce. And I think Friedrich Merz was very put a bit of a hold on it and was very skeptical and said, yeah, but it needs to be only also in a sort of area where you have more yeah, sort of heavy industry and a sort of industrial framework. Like he was more skeptical, and I think the federal the minister president of Turing, he was quite upset about that and said, well, this this is like a vicious circle. We have everything. We also want to have a piece of the cake because that's one of the major investments, right?
Hmm.
From the money that is now going to be invested, and if everything goes to the industrial heartlands of the West, then it's like this vicious circle, is what I said before. Those who have already get more, but I guess the people in Baden-Württemberg will argue, well, we have like 20,000, 22,000 people are being made redundant at the company Bosch. We also need something, right? What I found interesting is that, I mean, in the East, I think the longing for peace is even bigger than in the West. And I found it was an interesting political move to demand more defense or like military companies. And then there's another problem, which maybe I should address, like Germany's investing a lot in drones at the moment. And all that development is where the big universities are, like mainly around Munich. Like this big company Helsing is based there.
Hmm.
So it's not in Dresden, it's not in Leipzig, it's again in the West. So I'm not quite sure. I mean, there's one place near the Polish border, Görlitz, where there are now buildings. I don't know what they're actually building, but beforehand they did trains, and now they're doing something for Rheinmetall.
Hmm. But of course, there's a long tradition in Eastern Germany as well of technology, right? I mean, if I remember correctly, in Frankfurt Oder, that's where there were semiconductors in a very early time, even to GDR times. Um, Jena and Jenoptik, and optic technology there. Of course, you have wonderful technical universities in places like Dresden and elsewhere.
Yeah.
And there are a number of semiconductor companies that have come to Dresden, as well as to the conversation around Intel possibly investing in Magdeburg. So there are some lighthouses, if you will, in terms of Eastern German technology and Wissenschaft, science and research R&D. But it doesn't surprise me to hear that a lot of the current investment is in the area around Munich, also because of its experience in space technology, and aviation as well. Is it, do you see any sort of positives in the East, when it comes to this kind of research and development?
Possibility in when it comes to possibilities, I think they're in around Dresden with the Taiwanese chip factory that's going to build a big factory there. There's a hub developing, and Siemens has also a lot of technological investments there. But that would be like the only place where I see, okay, yeah, this is actually going quite well.
Hmm.
So, but otherwise, I mean, there might be good startups, but from what I hear is that they always, in the end, struggle when it comes to investment, when it comes to sort of support from other companies, that they, in the end, even if they're founded in the East, they have to go to the West because just the sort of network is
Yeah.
bigger.
You had mentioned a little bit earlier the Ostbeauftragte, or the sort of commissioner for East German affairs, or even the East German ambassador, if you will, or advocate. And the current Ostbeauftragte, I guess, was an infant when the wall came down. I think she's in her mid to late 30s right now. Elisabeth Kaiser. Um, she's new in the role, of course, with this new government that just came into office earlier this year. But I thought it was particularly interesting that this role as Ostbeauftragte moved from the federal chancellery to the finance ministry. I'm curious if you can share with us sort of why you think that was the case, and whether it it maybe means that this role loses in stature.
Hmm. Well, I think it definitely has. I mean, the CDU, they wanted to abolish this post because they said, yeah, it's pointless anyway. It doesn't have a budget, doesn't nobody really knows what this person is doing. And after 35 years, we have like similar problems in all parts of the of Germany, but the SPD somehow really wanted to keep it, and the SPD got the finance ministry, so they said, okay, we would move the Ostbeauftragte from the chancellery, because before it was like a job in the chancellery, much more representative, and Elisabeth Kaiser's predecessor, I mean, he wasn't. He was also cautious, but at least what he did do, he really did like networks, and he constantly did events in the chancellery, so people got like the sense of yeah, that this is an important issue at least, and there were some new networks developing. But now, I mean, and also I didn't find it so lucky that Elisabeth Kaiser, she had a baby, and then the first four months she disappeared from the scene and took like parental leave. I mean, it's like great, and it's really lovely for her, but of course politically, if you're in such a position, it's not super helpful, because in the first month, especially before before the unification jubilee and the fall of the wall jubilee in autumn, you can actually do something, but you have to be present in the debate, and you have to bring about something what you think, so, and make some sort of challenging demands or so. I mean, the Ostbeauftragte really has nothing else but her own voice to fight for the East Germans. So I think it's a sort of it's probably the last time that this job is being given. I think it's sort of slowly dying, and I think that would be a good thing. I would have preferred to have an Ost-West-Beauftragten, someone who actually deals with this cohesion problem, and not just in a sort of historical way, but also I mean, the West can also learn so much from the East, because a lot of the problems are also there in the West. They're just maybe not as radical, not as sort of advanced when it comes to, you know, like deindustrialization, or like a lot of population with old age. So one can sort of see, like in the East, where some areas also in the West will go.
I mean, I think that's an important point, right? Some of these societal issues that are affecting all of Germany, and all of Europe in a sense, are bigger issues than just the issues that are driving the East. I mean, there is currently an Ostbeauftragte. I guess we have to hope that in the run up to this Friday, October 3rd, but then also in the run up to November 9th and the anniversary of the fall of the wall, the Ostbeauftragte will use her voice and be more active and visible, because it's probably important to be making the case that this is important, given that public opinion seems to be sort of turning away from identity politics when it comes to East and West. And yet at the same time, there seems to be sort of a strong sense of ostalgie in the East and vestalgie in the West, right? Sort of a reminiscence or nostalgia for things in the East and things in the West. Can you talk a little bit about how you see that sort of nostalgia for the past?
I think it's a little bit different developments in East and West. I think the East is beyond nostalgia. I think it's a complete fabrication that people want the GDR back. I mean, apart from some sort of crazy generals also who march in their uniform, but like this is like a super minority. People don't want the dictatorship of the GDR back. They know that the life was not better then, but they're also disillusioned and disappointed with the current state of the society. And I think they have moved on beyond this nostalgia, and have found this sort of search for identity, like East German identity is very strong. And I'm quite surprised how many books are constantly coming out that are saying wir sind anders, we're different, like, and people sort of remember their roots, and not so much the political thing or the state of the GDR, but more like the culture, you know, the sort of situation of the woman, the art. I went to a big exhibition of like the prefabricated buildings. You know, East Germany
Mhm.
was big on that. And there's a massive exhibition, like hundreds of young people really interested in learning that. So there seemed to be like a sort of thinking of like, okay, maybe you know, what can we learn for the present from the past a little bit, and also a little bit distancing. We're different from the West. We're not like you, and we don't seek your approval either. And that is
Mhm.
maybe a big change, because beforehand, the last 35 years, East Germans were mainly seek a lot of the times trying to become like West Germans and seeking approval, and this seemed to have changed. And I think for West Germans, it's like a little bit the harder situation, because East Germans had like changed for the last 35 years. And for the West Germans, it's like now really tough when they see all these news about, yeah, big job losses, as I said, at Bosch, at Thyssen, at Ford, and nothing else really coming, you know, and then all these sort of seemingly unsolvable problems with the pension and the welfare state, and constant announcement, but nothing really happening. I think a lot of my West German friends, they often feel like they miss these sort of seemingly quieter times of the 80s, of the 1980s, maybe when everything seemed to be easier.
Mhm. I mean, it's I guess in that sense, it's nice to sort of think back to another time when maybe things were easier. But the fact is that there are some pretty big challenges right now, and the challenges that you just outlined, and the concerns, I think are probably also drivers for support of the alternative for Germany, the AfD. You had touched on them a little bit before. Of course, the AfD in the last election was the strongest party in Eastern Germany, but in most of Western Germany, it was the second strongest party as well. That's something that's often not discussed. Um, and one of the drivers of support for the AfD is sort of the amount of change that people have had to deal with, and the uncertainty of the times that we're living in. Um, can you maybe talk a little bit about sort of your take on the AfD in Eastern Germany and reasons why it's so strong there?
Hmm. Well, I always say that the AfD is not the problem. It's just a symptom of a sort of deeper problem. And the AfD was founded in Hessen in 2013. And I mean, the clues in the name, the alternative, and it was a direct reaction on Chancellor Merkel's "there's no alternative" towards the European rescue policy. So, and it was and since then it has developed into from a sort of anti-Europe party into an anti-immigration party with quite sort of harsh rhetoric, often harsher than the Italian brand or the French brand, but like similar. But so they are sort of swimming on this sort of on this wave of right-wing populist parties, but they were very clever that they sort of made like a little sort of East German brand out of it. So they they packaged it in a sort of East German identity way. For example, they used words like "we finish vollende die Wende" in one election campaign, and so they played with the hopes of the 1998, no, not 98, 89 revolution, and they're using old products like a old bike, like old products to to play with that and to show their East German identity, which is all fake because most of their functionaries, most of the people in the party are West Germans, but they managed to pick up this frustration that was there. They didn't have to invent it, but there was I mean, the frustration in East Germany was there for a long, long time, really long time. I mean, and no other party was able to pick it up. Like and in East Germany they have the advantage that the connections to the other parties are not so strong like in the West, because they all arrived there in 1990 and extended sort of their net of organization, but nothing really grew apart from Die Linke, maybe, which was the old communist party. So they never really got a foot in there. So the AfD somehow managed something that no other party managed, like really gather support and get like lots of new members. And I mean, I don't know, like one person said to me the other day, the AfD at the moment has a libido, and maybe that's a bit flippant, but they seem to be able to speak in a language that people find more relatable and honest. Like they have, and I think this is like for everyone who's in a sort of center or center left, like a really hard situation and really also bitter that these people have managed that, and we, so to say, haven't really.
But
So, yeah.
no, I was just going to say it's really interesting to see how this party is sort of developing to be even more of a catch-all party, if you will, right? It means one thing to people in the East, something else to people in the West, right? And you talked about it being a little bit more anti-war
Mm,
than some of the other parties, and that this is important. In Eastern Germany, it's um, somewhat more pro-Russian. We've certainly seen that in some of the rhetoric. In the West, it also seems to be a little bit more pro the United States, even though some of its origin were very much anti-Euro, anti-EU, anti-NATO, anti-US. And it's just interesting to see how this party sort of is capturing the interest of a lot of very different
mm,
individuals.
mm. I think it
Yeah.
also has changed a bit. And like for example, of course, there are links between Trump and the AfD. So of course now the AfD likes this America that is at the moment showing the current government better than the previous government. And there are also, I mean, on the question of Wehrpflicht, for example, like conscription, there's a big debate within the AfD. So and there the splits are between East, East and West. But if you look at the parliamentary party, for example, of the AfD, 70% of the members of parliament are from the West. So because it's just in the numbers,
Right.
if you look like North Rhine-Westphalia is bigger than the whole of East Germany. So in the end,
Well, it will also be very interesting to see what happens in some of the state elections next year that are on the horizon. And
yes.
related to that, I just received a question from somebody who's asking whether you think the AfD will do well enough in one of the upcoming elections to form a government.
Well, the latest surveys are quite sort of shocking, crazy. Almost 40% in Sachsen-Anhalt, and a big surprise last week for me as well, 38% in Mecklenburg-Vorpommern, which was a
Hmm.
previous SPD stronghold. SPD there now 19%.
Yeah,
Unbelievable.
yeah.
So I don't know, but a year is a long time in politics, and a lot can happen till then. And maybe the CDU main candidate Sven Schulze, maybe he catches up. He's not very well known yet. He he seems a bit sort of boring, but okay. But I don't know. It will be a very tricky
Hmm.
race, I
Hmm.
think.
Let me close by sticking with this topic, but shifting a little bit. You had a piece a week or so ago about the ban of the potential ban of the AFD, and
Hmm.
that the debate around banning the AFD or not really shows some social polarization in Germany. Can you talk about how that is sort of playing out?
Well, I think like in most things, Germany is lagging behind the US when it comes to society issues, and I think this polarization that you are very familiar with and had for many years is like now playing out much stronger in Germany than it was previously. It's still not as bad as in the US. I don't want to say that, but there are, there's like a really like a really real problem with like debate at the moment, I feel. And some people like the conceptions of the problems of the contemporary of the times, they differ so much that people don't even feel they can talk about it. And I was probably you're talking about this discussion that I went where it completely escalated about the AfD prohibition because some people feel very, I mean, I can understand that they feel very passionate that this would be like the magic bullet to get rid of the of this problem, but I don't think it is. So, and we also have the same problems as many Western societies, that we have these echo chambers and people have sort of withdrawn. Also, I think something from the corona crisis, people withdraw into their own bubbles and read their own media, speak to the people that think alike, and it gets harder and harder to sort of cross bound like cross
Mhm.
the lines or speak with each other without shouting like fascists to each other, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that there's a real challenge around political discourse, as you
Yeah,
say, right now.
absolutely.
And that we're seeing signs that it's difficult to be civil and have those kinds of exchanges. And so that's something that has been, developing in both countries, but in other democracies as well.
Mm.
Sabine, herzlichen Dank. Many, many thanks for this sort of deep dive into what's going on in Eastern Germany and helping us understand what is taking place there, in the run up to this 35th anniversary of German unification. I think this continues to be a topic of interest for us in the US and of course in Germany to see how this plays out. And so I just want to thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today about this.
Thank you. Thank you for your interest.
We will continue to be interested, so I look forward to continuing the conversation with you, and I hope that there will be other opportunities for you to talk about this in other circles and formats in the days ahead, because I would think that with everybody thinking about October 3rd, there should be some opportunities. So I hope that there will be other ways that you can that you
I
can.
wasn't complaining about it. I was just observing it. I'm quite
Yeah,
happy that I don't have to do anything and can concentrate on my writing work. But it was just such a sort of shift from
yeah.
the past.
Well, but I think it's very valuable. It might be a relief, but it's also very valuable. So,
Thank you so
Sabine,
much.
herzlichen Dank.
Very
Many,
kind.
many thanks. And we look forward to connecting with you again in the not too distant future.
With pleasure. Have a nice day.